Welcome here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on WakeUpCallDT.com, your one-stop sports shop, and on MixLR.com/WakeUpCallDT. Proud to be hanging out here with you every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Hope you're enjoying yourself this week. The first couple days of September. Hard to believe that we're already sitting here in September, but that is how this year has gone. It's kind of just rocking and rolling, you know what I mean? And you got to spend it wisely. You have to really make sure that you spend it wisely. And what I mean by that is, what you're doing. What are you doing with that time? You know what I mean? How are you spending? How are you spending the precious moments that you have? We only have today. We don't know if we have tomorrow. We don't know where we go from here, but we know we have today. So what are you doing with your time? How are you chasing your dreams? Are you with the person that you want to be with? Are you going after the things in life that you truly want? Are you taking time to relax? Are you going and getting that checkup at the doctor that you need to get? Are you, getting your dog a haircut? Whatever it may be, are you taking care of the things you need to take care of, and are you taking care of yourself? So, very, very important. Very, very important. And I hope that you take the time and that you're good to yourself this morning. We are very happy, as always, to be inside of the Cafe Cubal studios. You see my Cafe Cubal coffee is right there. My Guatemala coffee, the dark chocolate and raspberry, is there, and you can get yours today by going to WakeUpCallDT.com, and on the Central New York tab, scrolling down to Cafe Cubal, you can get all your information there about the mobile cafe that can come right to you, right to your neighborhood, or right to your business, and then also the opportunity for local delivery. And in Onondaga County, if you live anywhere inside of Onondaga County, there is no delivery charge to have your favorite coffee and all of your other favorites from Cafe Cubal delivered right to you. You can also go to any one of their 5 locations that are on. We have the South Salina Street location, the West Water Street location, as well as the new location in North Townsend Street, the location at Golisano Children's Hospital, and of course on James Street for the Eastwood Cafe. All of those, you can get the physical addresses to each and every single one of those by going to cafecubal.com or by going to wakeupcalldt.com, that Central New York tab, like I said, scrolling down and clicking on Cafe Cubal. So thank you for that. Jerry said, good morning, Dan. No trash talk. Your team is too good. Yeah, it doesn't feel like it, Jerry. Really doesn't feel like it. My Toronto Raptors are screwing up right now. I don't want to say screwing up, but I thought this was going to be a tough series with Boston because Boston's got a lot of firepower. But I'm surprised in Toronto right now, and not in a great way. So hopefully they'll get ready and they'll start changing the game on their end, because it's looking a little bit dicey right now, and I'm not liking that by any stretch of the imagination. But thank you and congratulations on your 2-0 start to the series between Boston and Toronto. With that being said, inside of the Cafe Cubal studios, I have a great show set up for you. As you know, every single Wednesday, this show is split into 2 videos, and that happens because fantasy football is such a huge part of what we do here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora that it is a show within a show. And because my fantasy football players all around the world need to get to that information, and sometimes really rapidly, we split up the show here into 2 parts every Wednesday so that we can dedicate our fantasy football coverage when we share it on YouTube and we share it on wakeupcalldt.com and everything. You can get right to it. So with that being said, we're going to start off today's show in just a couple minutes with Bob Holliday inside of Mon Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factories. What's poppin'? I do want to let you all know it doesn't matter where you live in the United States. You can order from monpaspopcorn.com. I'm actually going to show you that here as we got a second. You can order from anywhere in the country at monpaspopcorn.com. And when you order from that, if you're seeing a black screen right now, don't get nervous here. We're right here with you. Just bringing up monpaspopcorn.com. So the website allows you the opportunity to get any of your favorites, and if you've never tried it, to try something and to get yourself out there. It's so much better than your typical popcorn and even your typical kettle corn. They just have something special going on at Mon Pa's, and it's fantastic flavoring and everything. So you can see the tins here. The tins are refillable. Half price in-store refills forever. So you see that every single tin that you buy comes with a half price in-store refill for the rest of forever, which is a very long time. You can pick your flavors here. They have the original kettle corn, a unicorn mix, old-fashioned caramel. You can keep scrolling down here and see everything. Cheddar, which is some of my favorites here. Then you can see, you get 15% off of all orders when you sign up. And then if you go through me, you actually get 20%. So if I click on the caramel apple kettle corn, let's say. So I click on that. And I say, okay, select an option. Let's say I want a medium. And let's say I want 2 of them. And we're going to add them to the cart. When we add them to the cart and we have them here, we're going to click checkout. And once we click checkout on monpauspopcorn.com, hopefully it'll pop up here. We're going to have all this stuff in here. Yada, yada, yada. So I'm going to fill this out. I would fill this out, obviously. And I'm just going to say, I'm going to come up with a random thing here. So we're going to say Joe Smith, or pardon me, did that wrong. Happy morning. Happy Wednesday. Joe Smith, let's say 1234 Middle Street. And let's say that Joe lives in Sioux Falls. Sioux Falls, North Dakota. Where's North Dakota? Down, down, down. There it is. And I don't even know what Sioux Falls, North Dakota's zip code is. Let's find out. Sioux Falls zip code. So we get that. And what's it telling me here? So we're going to put 57105. So I'll put that in there. 57105. Email will say joe@aol.com. And we'll click next. Oh, we got to put his phone number in. So I'll put 315-678-9012. So we move it over here. And we're going to say, okay, delivery. So we're going to click on delivery. And then we have add a coupon code. You're going to enter DT20. Apply. And you'll see that 2479 here. We'll see that everything changes. When we click, we got to click next. Oh, you got to put the credit card number in. But you see the coupon code will take some money off of this for you, give you 20% off of your order from Mon Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory. So make sure that you do that today, and make sure that that when you do it, you can pick out whatever your favorites are going to be, but you get 20% off of your order from Mon Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory. So make sure that you click on that. I know that I couldn't obviously put all the information in on here for you, but just trying to show you what it looks like. And you get the coupon code DT20, and you'll see money come off, and every little bit helps. So make sure that you go and order today from Ma and Pa's Popcorn.com and use the promo code DT20. With that being said, Bob Holliday is going to come up first inside of What's Poppin' here on Wake Up Call with Darren Tortora, brought to you by Mon Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory. So Bob and I will have a conversation here on a lot of great things. We actually perfectly timed this because Bob and I just voted in the Atlantic Coast Conference football's preseason poll. Every year we vote in the preseason poll. We vote for each position. So we vote for quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and then we vote for offensive line, defensive line, linebacker. We vote for cornerbacks and safeties, and we vote for specialists. And then we'll vote for the preseason player of the year in the ACC, and then we'll do the projected order of finish, which this year includes Notre Dame. So we did all of that yesterday. We had to have it in. Bob and I are going to talk about our votes coming up here in just a second. We're also going to talk about the facts that the ACC football season, that a lot of people kind of have been holding their breath on whether or not it's actually physically going to happen. They released their game times for the first 2 weeks of the season, as well as some other games later on in the season. So we're rolling towards something that looks more and more real, and Bob and I will discuss that. So like I said, perfect timing as we get set for a hopeful fall 2020 college football season. Bob and I just fresh off of voting in our ACC preseason poll and fresh off of those game times being released, including 3 times for Syracuse University football. And then in hour number 2, we will separate and start a new video here on Facebook. Those of you listening on MixLR can stream it right through. Those of you here on Facebook will see us shift to another video here and talk about the NFC East, analyzing the Dallas Cowboys, the New York Giants, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Washington football team, because they still don't have a name, so they just have a W. And it's, one of the only W's that they've seen in the last few seasons, and I mean that with love. The Washington Redskins don't win a lot, and apparently they don't choose names well either. So hopefully the Washington Redskins can get it together. I know that Jerry needs it. I know a lot of Washington Redskins fans are hoping that, they can at least come up with a name and stop this identity crisis. So with that being said, that'll be in hour number 2. We're going to take a quick step aside for a fast break, and when we come back, I will be joined by Bob Holliday of WRALSportsFan.com to speak on all things ACC right after this.
I'm George Townsend of Honda City with some good advice when buying a new car. The true cost of owning a new car is determined by the appraised value when you trade it. No vehicle appraises higher than a Honda. Next, look for low APRs and deep discounts. You also want low maintenance costs and great fuel economy. That's why my advice to you is to buy a new Honda. Looking pre-owned, visit our Honda Certified Used Car Center. Honda City, 7140 Henry Clay Boulevard, Liverpool, or HondaCity-CNY.com.
This is Jimmer Sikowski, owner-operator of Chick-fil-A Cicero, 7916 Brewerton Road in Cicero, right in front of the Home Depot. I had a deep feeling that God wanted me to do something bigger with my life and to help people, help others. I kept putting Chick-fil-A in my life, and I realized as I was going through the franchise selection process that positively impacting the lives of others was really core to what we do here at Chick-fil-A. First of all, it starts with the food. The food is brought in fresh daily. We bring in local produce. We prepare to order in the kitchen. We hand bread our chicken. We hand spin our milkshakes. It's great food. It doesn't taste like fast food. I think the second thing is the way people feel when they come in a Chick-fil-A restaurant. It's different. We try to treat people with intentional kindness here, which is very different and deeper than good customer service. And so I think it feels remarkable for most people to come in a Chick-fil-A restaurant. And then lastly, the impact that we try to have in the community is very different. It's a big part of the expectation of every operator of a Chick-fil-A restaurant is that they're actively engaged in their community, they're a leader in the community, and they're making a difference. When they realize that what we're striving to do is to shine a little light in their life, that's a very, very different experience than you will have in any other quick service restaurant. And it's that remarkable experience that I think people will emotionally connect with.
Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on WakeUpCallDT.com, your one-stop sports shop, and on MixLR.com/WakeUpCallDT. Proud to be here with you every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, hanging out with you where sports truly meets life, and we thank you so much for being here and being a part of the show this morning on Wake Up Call. And whether you're watching on MixLR.com/WakeUpCallDT or listening, or pardon me, watching on Facebook Live, on Facebook.com/LiveNowDT, or listening on MixLR.com/WakeUpCallDT. We appreciate you being here and spending some time with us here this morning. And Bob Holliday joins us live right now inside of the Cafe Kubal studios to speak on all things ACC. And Bob joins us down in the Raleigh area. And so we're happy to have him from North Carolina covering all those teams. And in the heart of the ACC, we have that heartbeat. And I think a lot of what we do here is hoping this season during coronavirus and everything going on, that there is a heartbeat of the season. And with the ACC preseason poll coming out that Bob and I voted in, as well as the game times being released for the first couple weeks and then some other games down the road, that heartbeat looks like it's still showing up on that, right there. I mean, we're still seeing it in that hospital bed, and that's a good thing to see, is that there's still a heartbeat of this season. So let's bring in Bob. Bob, how you doing today?
Good, I'm doing great, and in addition to the factors that you cited, the TV times and the fact that you and I, among others, have cast our preseason ballots, we would also note that the ACC network has begun doing more and more live programming. I think these are all strong indicators that, against all odds, that we're going to have an ACC football season. Or maybe I should say we're going to start the season and then see what happens.
Yeah, we're going to at least give it a shot, is what we're seeing here with ACC. And, it's funny when people have been asking me this question of, is it going to happen? Is there going to be a season? What I found to be really interesting, and I said this, was, I would anticipate that there's going to be some type of a season, because we kept getting emails about, here's the new ACC host that was hired, here's the programming that we're doing, this is when it starts. So I was like, well, they're going to have to be talking about some football team and doing something. So it's funny you bring that up, because before the ACC preseason poll and the game times were released, we started getting those emails about, this is what's coming up on the ACC network, this is a new host that was hired, this is our programming schedule. So I said, well, obviously they're moving toward the season, because they're announcing all these things that they're going to do around college football, so they're anticipating it. So I think it's funny that we've been getting those emails the last couple weeks, kind of letting you and I know that this was a real thing.
Well, and the debate will wage all fall, I think. Is football that important? Should they be playing now at a time of real crisis in our country? And I think you can have a great debate about that. It depends, to a point, on your philosophy. But I think that the reasons for playing, first of all, the players want to play, and there are plenty of opt-out provisions. They're not pressured to play, and indeed some players have opted out. But the players want to play, and then the second thing is that the powers that be, and there is a medical advisory team for the Atlantic Coast Conference, the powers that be believe this can be done safely. And I think there's definite evidence that it can. It doesn't mean it will, but there's evidence that this can be done safely. We've seen it with most professional sports. Now, the college bubble is a bit more complicated than, say, the bubble for the NBA or the bubble for the National Hockey League up in Canada, but I think the schools have done a pretty good job of isolating their players. And to this point, the players have done a good job of isolating themselves, and that's really the key. I don't think there's nearly as much risk in playing football as there is bringing students back to campus. We saw that at North Carolina and North Carolina State, where kind of under the leadership of the Republican legislature and its board of governors that the legislature appointed, schools were encouraged to reopen with safety provisions, but at vast schools where you have lots and lots of students, you have Greek life, you have off-campus living, there were parties and there were problems. Now the students at NC State and UNC have been sent home, and the cases are beginning to come back, drop back down again. There will be online learning only at those two institutions. Now, there are other institutions in the 16-campus University of North Carolina system that I think are going to be able to get through without major difficulty. But on the really big campuses where you have so much off-campus living, it's been a problem. Now, the question is, obviously there's going to be some you're more likely to have, let me put it this way, the bubble protecting college football players is not as absolute as the bubble that the NFL will have, because players have academic responsibilities and they have lives. But I think the players know that to play this season, they really have to take very strong precautions. We'll see how it goes, but I think most of them will.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like you said, not so much an issue with the football team with asking them to follow protocol. It was more with the student body coming back, and Bob, you and I spoke about that, so, off the air, kind of just, what our thoughts were and our concerns were of some of that, and hoping that people take personal responsibility, seeing that there are people out there that don't. And, Syracuse had its own issues. Syracuse had, the students were allowed back, and then 5 seconds after they're back, there are a bunch of freshmen in the quad doing whatever the hell they want to do and not really caring. And Syracuse was very swift with it and their response to it. And, and seeking out who was involved with this and writing a letter that was very, very clear about how Syracuse felt. And I commended Syracuse because it wasn't a politically correct letter. It wasn't a watch how we talk to you. It was, we're disappointed in you. This was one of your first steps for many of you in showing that you're an adult, and you didn't show it. The world's expecting you to fail. You need to do better. So, I think that my concern, unfortunately, was a very real concern, which was having 100 players on campus for football is vastly different than having 30,000 or 70,000 students there. The more people you have in a room, the more risk you run of having somebody not follow the rules. That's just math. And unfortunately, at North Carolina, at NC State, at Syracuse, and at other places around the country, I don't know if it's the feeling of it won't affect me, or I don't care, or I'm going to live my life regardless because, other people's lives don't really matter to me right now, or I want to have the college experience and nobody's going to take it away from me. Whatever the reasoning was because of it, the ends don't justify the means don't justify the ends, and what some of these students decided to do ultimately punished everybody. And how sad that is when you talk about some of the universities like NC State, North Carolina, welcoming the kids back onto campus and then sending them all of them home and saying, well, I hope that 1 or 2 days that you had partying was worth it because now you can't be here at all. And just as soon as you came here, you went back home, and I'm pretty confident their parents weren't proud of that. So, this is a lesson that has to be taught, Bob, but it's a very unfortunate lesson to be taught because it could cost somebody their life.
Well, and here's something I find interesting. Clemson has taken a different approach. Clemson started with all online classes for the first 4 weeks. My niece is a rising freshman at Clemson, so I've followed this with some interest. She's been given a move-in date of September 11th. They're slowly bringing students back to campus. I like this gradual approach. On the other hand, though, it's going to be very interesting. If you're Dabo Swinney, you're kind of wondering, given what's happened at other college campuses, large college campuses, when the students came back, even though Clemson has had 4 weeks to kind of get things going and learn some things from what's going on at the other schools. Here's football season starting, and just as it's starting, the students are coming back. How's that going to work? So keep an eye on that.
Yeah, and Bob, you and I obviously we've experienced college. We went out there, we had fun, we did this, we did that. We didn't experience anything remotely even partially close to coronavirus, but what would be your words of advice, when you talk about having a niece there that's an aspiring freshman and whatnot? What are your words of advice to the students that are out there, and how important it is for them to understand that the short game and the long game are two very different things? And if you're going out there saying, hey, I'm going to party as soon as I get on campus, screw coronavirus, I'm going to have a good time, that short game has obviously killed the long game at North Carolina, at NC State, and, almost did it here at Syracuse, so potentially could have done it here at Syracuse. That was part of the warnings in the letters, is this one action could have really just taken everything off the rails. What are your words of advice to people out there, knowing that they want to have fun, they want to enjoy their lives, but having fun should always take a back seat to staying safe? I'm not telling people to not have a good time and be depressed and not enjoy their lives, but it's very important for us to understand that if we don't work together, none of us are going to have what we want. It's almost the reality of, in order to be selfish, you have to be selfless first. If you want something, you have to give first before you get in a situation like this, because being selfish is going to ruin it, but being selfless may allow you to be able to do what you want down the road.
Yeah, my advice would be that isolate as much as possible, and college is a time where you meet lots of people and you have lots of new friends, and it's exciting. but at the same time, the greatest danger is having large numbers of people together. It's not the parties per se that are the problem. The problem is that you've got large gatherings of people, in many cases close together, not wearing masks, and sometimes inside. And that's just a recipe for disaster. So my advice is, wear a mask when you're around other people, unless you're outside and more than 6 feet apart, and try to limit your association. The more exposure that you have to other people, particularly people that you don't know what they've been, where they've been and what they've been up to, the more exposure you have, the more risk.
Speaking here with Bob Holliday, a columnist for WRALSportsFan.com. Bob, for you, looking at all of this, I mean, when we think about the football players, these are people that we get to know over the years. A lot of them across the ACC I get to know, and you learn to respect them and appreciate them well outside of the sport of football. They've been on campus for weeks upon weeks. If you got into their shoes for a second, what would be kind of your thoughts right now, knowing that they have, for the most part, followed all the rules, and here comes the overall student body that could screw it up for everybody. I would imagine as a college student athlete, whether it's football or any sport out there, you're relying on the student body to do right by you, and you're in a situation right now where a lot of these guys, like I said, have followed the rules, but now they need everybody else to do the same thing.
Correct, and I think in most cases, classes themselves have been structured safely. I have not read of any university that had a problem because of too many students too close together in a class. Everything I've read is that the classes themselves have required masks and have had great social distancing, and that the back and forth between the professor and the students has been safely done and educational. And really, that would be the only situation where a football player would really have to be in contact with other students. Now, the player may choose to be in contact with other students, but that's the key issue. I think if I'm a player, I've worked very hard. In fact, one of the reasons to try to play football is these guys have been training their whole lives for this moment, and they don't have that many moments. They've been working very hard toward this. And if I'm a football player, I'm telling myself, I've worked way too hard to take any risks by, hanging out with students. What I don't, I don't know if they've been tested. I don't know what the risk level is. I'm just going to hang out with my teammates who I know have been tested. And I think that's the mindset you got to have. On the subject of testing, one university that has had success bringing students back is Duke University. Duke, of course, is a smaller school. Duke brought just freshmen and sophomores onto campus for in-person learning. And, of course, it's modified. They still have a mix of in-person learning and online learning. Duke's juniors and seniors are living off campus, and their classes are entirely online. Duke was able to test a large portion of its student body. And by being able to test such a high percentage, and of course they had some positive tests, but not that many, by being able to test, they were able to isolate very quickly. And I think they probably got their tests back. That's a big issue sometimes, is that you may have tests where it takes 7-8 days to get the results, and by the time you can use contact tracing to try to shut down the cluster is already mushroomed. At Duke, they were able to, with lots of testing, to isolate the few students that had the cases of COVID. And to this point, Duke's campus is looking to be in pretty good shape in terms of its health. We'll see. I mean, things change, but so far so good with the Duke plan. And it speaks to the point, the importance of testing. And that's why the ACC is playing a conference-only schedule with one game against a school that will meet the same COVID criteria. But testing. ACC players are now being tested 3 times a week. I don't know if they have been, but that will start now. where they're tested at the beginning of the week and in the middle of the week, and then the main thing is they're tested the day before the game, and you have to pass the test to play. Now, here's something interesting that I learned last night, talking with a friend of mine at NC State, that one issue happens that if you get a player who tests positive, then those that were with that he was in contact with must also be held out for 14 days. And so, for example, if a cornerback tests positive, well, you could lose a substantial part of your secondary because he obviously would have been in contact with, the safeties and fellow cornerbacks and that kind of thing. And that's one of the one of the great mysteries as to how this season is going to unfold. And that's why so many coaches are really stressing versatility, trying to have linemen who can play several different positions and receivers who can play defense and that kind of thing. Because if you get one case, it could affect a large part of that particular position room.
Yeah, and speaking here with Bob Holliday, columnist for WRALSportsFan.com, you bring up a lot of things, and I think it's kind of funny, the irony of what you said. You have to pass the test to play, speaking on the COVID-19 test, but, you also, as a student, have to pass your classes in order to be on the field. So now there's two tests that these gentlemen are going to have to pass consistently to stay on the field. And the thought of, losing a secondary or losing Trevor Lawrence or losing, like a star defensive lineman or a star linebacker or something like that, there is that thought of, okay, well, does that level the playing field a little bit more? Does that put you in a better position? Let's say Syracuse is playing Clemson, and Clemson loses half of their D-line and one of their linebackers. Now, all of a sudden, where does this game go? Because Syracuse has pushed Clemson these last few years anyways, defeated them within the last couple of years, and now if they're in a situation like that, where does that put Syracuse? So, I think it's going to be definitely interesting to take a look at this very unique season. I think the climate is very strange, Bob, for you and I as people that have consistently been covering college football throughout the years, to know that, the country has some lights that are on and some lights that are off. And if we were on a plane right now, we would see a bunch of dim, but, those lights are either dim or gone in the Big Ten, dim or gone in the Pac-12. But we see some lights on in the ACC, in the SEC, in the Big 12, in the AAC. And, it's a very unique world in college football to see some of these conferences playing, some of them are not. And then to go beyond that, some of the conferences have decided not to play, but they've told the players, or they've told the teams within the conference, you can play, and then other conferences are playing and some teams cannot. So, or like they'll opt out. So there's a very unique world of these conferences aren't playing, these ones are, and then there's other conferences that are saying, we're not going to play, but you can, school, or the school saying, I'm not going to play even though the conference is playing. What do you think about that dynamic, in schools like Austin Peay and Old Dominion, where, they might be in a conference that chose to play and they didn't, or vice versa?
It's a pretty amazing process, Dan. And I think the team that emerges as the best in the ACC and even the entire country is going to be the program that manages the complex factors of this pandemic the best. And I have a story that I think is at least remotely analogous. There's nothing very analogous to the current pandemic, but in 2001 we had September 11th, and it was similar in one sense in that you had major tragedy and off-field distractions. In 2001, there was a football game between North Carolina and Florida State. Florida State was just a year or two removed from Bobby Bowden's second national championship. The Noles were rolling. North Carolina, under new coach John Bunning, had started the season 0-3.
Yeah.
They'd had to play at Oklahoma, at Texas, tough games. They lost a home game they should have won at Maryland when Willie Parker fumbled twice, and that led to Willie getting in Coach Bunning's doghouse, and also led to Willie, when he became a star with the Pittsburgh Steelers, saying on Monday Night Football, Willie Parker Clinton High School instead of Willie Parker University of North Carolina, but I digress. North Carolina, 0-3, really, after the tragedy of 9/11, there was a week off. The football schedule was pushed back a week. North Carolina really handled the distractions extremely well, came out prepared to play against a very, very talented Florida State team. North Carolina won that game, Dan, 41-9. There's no way North Carolina, maybe North Carolina could pull an upset, but no way that game should have been 41-9. Now, there was talent on that Carolina team. They had Julius Peppers, Ryan Sims, a couple of first-round draft picks. But to me, that underscores the point about the program that manages the complex process of preparation in troubling times is going to be the program that emerges on top.
Yeah, and that's the thing that what it comes down to. And the other thing about it, too, is the ACC has, put out this protocol of things that need to happen. But, there is some concern that some schools have of saying, okay, you have to trust that these other schools are doing what they say they're doing and that they're doing it frequently and doing it correctly and that their, tests are accurate and whatnot. What do you think about that? The concern of the fact of, there could be a school like Syracuse saying, okay, we got this down. We haven't had any positive tests in a while. We're doing what we need to do. And then they go and play like a Boston College, and maybe Boston College didn't do this or didn't do that. And obviously, I'm just making an analogy. There's no truth to this whatsoever. We're just talking about two different teams here. But, there's a lot of trust that has to come between schools now because, as you said, a school can form its bubble trying to keep its football players, for the most part, away from everybody else. They're going to travel together. They're going to leave together. They're going to get there together. They're going to be on the same plane. They're going to go to practice together. They're going to go to the hotel together. But ultimately, they're going to have to play another team, and they have to trust that that team has done everything that they said that they did. And, because you look at something like, okay, well, what if a team tests and their star quarterback's going to be out, their star running back's going to be out, their star defensive end's going to be out, and, there's that thought of, do you fudge the data? Do you say, oh, no, they're okay, we need to play because if we win this game, this is going to put us in first place in the conference? There's a lot of trust that has to go on, and there's a lot of moral action that has to be taking place underneath the actual testing.
My understanding of the protocol is that the conference will be involved in the administration of the pregame test, and that's really the safety valve.
Yeah.
Obviously, without that, you're just taking everybody's word that they're being safe. But the pregame test, the day before the game, administered by independent people, and with a quick turnaround result, that will show if someone has been if any team is trying to hide an asymptomatic player and sneak him into the game, that test should ferret out that possibility. That's my understanding now. So now I think what we are going to have. So I don't think that the scenario of one ACC school trying to play a player that shouldn't be that may have COVID. I don't think that's going to happen. I think what will happen though is that there are going to be some players who the coach thought were going to be available, who he learns one day before game time, are testing positive. I think that could happen. Hope not, but I think it's a long season. I think it's likely that may happen to some schools, maybe many schools.
Well, and I think the reality of it all is we're going to see how good these coaches are because they're going to have to be able to ad-lib and do what they need to do on the fly. They're going to have to know their players very well. They're going to have to know the strengths and weaknesses, and they're going to have – this affects everything. This affects their, how they recruit, what they recruit, getting more hybrid players in the future, not knowing when this is going to go away. And then on top of that, in game time, knowing can these coaches pivot? And then at the same time, to the player side of it, it gives an opportunity for the players to get out there that maybe wouldn't get out there. And Bob, we could treat this like any other season. Syracuse under Doug Marrone a few years ago, they had so many injuries to their secondary that they literally had almost nobody left to fill those positions. And that was just, it was like Murphy's Law. That's what it was that year. Everybody was getting hurt. Things were happening. And so the reality of it all is coaches have dealt with players being out before. I know that this is a unique situation, but it's going to show a coach's ability to coach, their ability to pivot, what they're going to do in recruiting that might change a little bit and have to do with pivoting itself. And on top of all of that, it's going to show how well they know their players and where they can plug and play them in. And it'll give guys an opportunity to get some much-needed experience that could help the team down the road.
Well, you bring up a good point about the future. Both my son and daughter-in-law work very closely with epidemiologists, and the thinking of many epidemiologists is that COVID may be with us for some time to come. The pandemic may recede some, but that even when we get a vaccine, there's a chance the virus may mutate and may require an additional vaccine. So I think if I'm a coach, I'm thinking that we're going to be playing with this potentially for a couple of years. And yeah, I think it does change the way you recruit. I think versatility is going to be more and more important. But yeah, these coaches they're going to earn their money and then some this year because the end game adjustments that are going to have to be made as a result of potential changes to the lineup based on pregame tests. They're going to be potentially monumental in some cases and really require some really deep thinking. How are we going to do this now?
Yeah, and that's it's going to cause people to have to get, they're going to have to dig deep, and they're going to have, like you said, earn their pay, maybe even more so this time around. As we're speaking with Bob Holliday, Bob, you and I had the opportunity. I think it's a blessing. I love to not just see a poll come out, but to be a part of it and to know that your vote counts, and that's ever important in today's world. To make sure you go out and vote. I tell people all the time, I don't care what you vote your conscience, you vote for whoever you want to vote for, but make sure that you register and get yourself out there and vote this year, and vote every chance you get. If you don't like the way things are going, then you got to look to the local level first and different things that are going on in your community and vote your conscience. Know who these people are to the best of your ability and then go out and vote. We have to do that in polling when it comes to the ACC, and obviously a very different way, but we have to do our research. And, when we have ACC media days where we get to be around these coaches and players, that does something for you. And, obviously spring ball does something for us too. But you and I had to vote this year without spring ball. We also had to vote this year without sitting there and, passing the mic back and forth at ACC media day. So what did you do when it came to getting set for your voting, and what did you think about a very unique year as you sat down with the ACC preseason poll and knowing that, some of the stuff at our disposal that maybe you come to not even appreciate in certain moments because you expect it to be there? What was it like to not have it there?
It was a surreal experience, Dan, to fill out and cast my ACC preseason ballot. As you said, we didn't have the ACC kickoff, and one of the things, you just learn lots of little small things from the ACC kickoff. You learn about linemen, for example, offensive linemen, and that was where I felt most inadequate, was trying to identify the five best offensive linemen in the ACC. We also didn't have media guides. When I get my ACC media guide, that becomes like the most important book in my life almost, in many days. I'm constantly referring to it for scheduling information and roster changes and that kind of thing. And so to do this without the ACC kickoff, without media guides, without, as you say, spring practice and the attendant publicity regarding it, it was very, very tough. Now, I always, when I go to the ACC championship game, I always save the printed copy of the season-ending stats. So I pulled those out, and I think for the skill positions, I was able to make decisions. And really for defense, too, I was able to make decisions based on stats. And I did watch, the ACC Network had a preview show Sunday night with Ashley Riggs and Wes Durham and two fine writers from ESPN, and I learned some things there. I learned that, for instance, that Clemson only had one starter returning among it, from its offensive line. Normally I would probably vote 2 or 3 offensive linemen from Clemson, but felt like, if that's a rebuilding for Dabo, that maybe that's not the position to vote for a Clemson Tiger. Plus, obviously, you got to vote for Trevor Lawrence and you got to vote for Travis Etienne. But anyway, the offensive line was hard, and one thing I did, Notre Dame always has a great offensive line. I think the conference will see that this year. And so I did vote for two Notre Dame offensive linemen. One's a graduate student, and the other's a senior. Felt like those were pretty solid choices. But the offensive line was really, really hard. Here's something interesting. Eric McLean, analyst for the ACC network, I actually covered Eric as a high school tight end at Jack Britt High School, which is near Fayetteville. Eric had had a great career at Clemson, won a national championship, and I think is a really, really smart analyst. Anyway, he cast his ballot, preseason ballot, and put it on Twitter. And one of the college football writers noted that, wow, hardly any Notre Dame presence on this ballot. And he said this is going to be the first time in college football history that a conference preseason snub will motivate the Irish. And I thought that was a really great observation, and I'm sure they'll take it that way. But, this is a really good conference now. And I think the Irish will find that out. They may win most of their games, they may win all their games, but particularly the fact that we in the ACC are not as familiar with their players as we are with, say, Scott Satterfield of Louisville, who has Tutu Atwell, I think maybe the most dynamic player in the conference. We're familiar with the people that we've seen, but Notre Dame we haven't seen as much, and so it would not surprise me when the preseason team comes out if we just see, 2 or 3 Notre Dame players on the team, and I would bet at least 1 or 2 of them would be offensive linemen.
Yeah, and that's one thing to take a look at. We trust the line that typically, trust the line of Clemson, as you're talking about, and and trust what the line can do at Notre Dame and the players that have come through there. So normally those are some safe bets to look at Clemson's line and to look at Notre Dame's line. I know going through this, obviously quarterback Trevor Lawrence. I don't think there's going to be much argument there. Running
Sam Howell is an amazing quarterback, and I would have voted for Sam. But Trevor, you got to vote for Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
So
and that's the thing is there's some things that we just know. I know that I've cast my ballot before, and like you were saying, there's other guys that are capable, but there's some players where you just look at it and I go, yeah, I'm very positive, 71%, 82, whatever it may be. I'm very confident that this person's going to get voted as this. So Trevor Lawrence at running back, Travis Etienne out of Clemson at running back. Boston College always puts together good running backs. This was a tough thing for me to pick my second, but I went with David Bailey. Wide receivers, I gave some credit across here. Amari Rogers for Clemson, Taj Harris for Syracuse, because the amount of numbers that they could put up and what he's been able to do as a young player, I think Syracuse deserved to vote there. Daz Newsome, who is kind of electrifying wide receiver, as well as a return specialist, is somebody to look at. And then, there's other guys like all-purpose backs like Hassan Hall for Louisville. And going through this, I thought it was interesting that Aaron Service for Syracuse, because Syracuse didn't have a votable name in the entire linebacker corps as it's changed once again. And I asked Mikel Jones if that's put, and that's going to be coming up soon on the show. I asked Mikel if he felt like if the core as a whole felt like that's a chip on their shoulder they're going to take with them, and he said absolutely. That's going to give them an extra push that they didn't even have a name that you could actually select and put into the ballot box. And so for those of you that don't know, in our polls, we don't just vote for anybody. There is a list that is given, and we choose amongst that list. Aaron Service had a little bit of an interesting thing here, and I don't know if you saw it, Bob, but Aaron Service has played offensive tackle and center for Syracuse, and he was up for the ability for you to vote for him at both positions, which I thought was very unique.
The schools nominate the players, and so if a player's not, if we can't vote for him, he's not nominated by the school. The argument is not with us; it's with his coach. I don't know how each school handles it, but the schools nominate the players. But I think my ballot was somewhat different than yours, but there's so many good choices. Of course, Travis Etienne is for everybody. I actually voted J.B. Hawkins of Louisville as the second running back because he has he actually ran for more yards last year than Etienne, so he's the highest yard getter returning. You bring up an interesting point about Boston College. I actually, with the coaching change, they suffered a lot of losses. I just don't have very high expectations for Boston College this year. And other than Richardson, their fine linebacker, I don't think I voted for any of the Eagles for all conference. Back to Eric McLean's ballot, he and I both, I think, agree that, in fact, this point was made during the ACC show Sunday night, that North Carolina has the league's most dynamic receiving core, and I would certainly agree with that. Eric and I both voted for De'Ami Brown, all conference. A difference was that he voted for the Florida State player, Tamorian. I'm trying to remember Tamorian's last name here. Tamorian Terry.
Yeah.
He voted for Tamorian Terry, which he's I would say a pretty sure NFL prospect, pretty sure pro, and that's a great pick. But at the same time, I voted for Daz Newsome because Daz Newsome is in an offense where he's going to have really dynamic numbers. Sam Howell's going to get him the ball at all places on the field, and so based on that, I gave the nod to Dan. But you could easily make a case for Tamorian Terry as you could for many other receivers. Just very hard picking these.
Yeah, no, it definitely is, and there's a lot of good guys throughout here. I will tell you, Bob, for you being down in the state of North Carolina, my favorite name that showed up on the ballot?
Storm Duck.
Yes, sir. I didn't even have to tell you, and I want to let everybody know on live radio and video, I didn't tell Bob that. I didn't say a word, and so he just picked that out here, but Storm Duck, and he was born Storm Chandler Duck. That is his name. Storm Duck, by far, without question, one of my favorite names of all time.
Yeah, back in the early 80s at WRAL, we used to have an all-names team from our high school football coverage. And East Carolina had a squad with several really good names. Maybe I'll think of them before the show's over. But, it's been a while. So anyway, I've always been a name guy. Like Massachusetts once had a governor, Endicott Peabody. I just thought that was a great name. But yeah, it has been a while since we've had a name like Storm Duck. What a fabulous name. And he's a pretty good player, too. And North Carolina's secondary is really good. Now, none of them, or not many of them, I think, got all conference votes, and I would be shocked if any of them made all conference. But what's happened with the North Carolina secondary, players like Storm, they've had so many injuries in the secondary over the last two seasons that young players like Storm have gotten lots of playing time. And so now Storm and some of the newer players that were playing, helping keep their finger in the dike last year, they're experienced, they're ready to go, and the players that missed last year, like Trey Morrison, for example, that are veterans and really good players, are also going to be back. North Carolina's secondary is very well coached by former NFL star Dre Bly, and I think North Carolina will have a very good secondary this year, and maybe the best linebacker core in the Atlantic Coast Conference. With Chaz Surratt and Gimmels is an outstanding player as well. North Carolina is green on the defensive front, and I think that's looking ahead to that big meeting at high noon, Dan, on September 12th in an empty Kenan Stadium. When the Orange comes to Chapel Hill, I think that's an area that Syracuse will definitely look to exploit. Is blocking North Carolina's young defensive front. The Tar Heels have built depth there, but I think it remains to be seen how good they're going to be at fending off blocks. And so I think Syracuse obviously lost a lot of talent last year. Mo Neal departing, and Kendall Coleman and several other top, Lakeem Williams, several of the top stars on defense. But obviously, and Tristan Jackson leaving school early is a big loss. But Syracuse still has Tommy DeVito. He was the architect of the Orange's come-from-behind win in the Carrier Dome a couple of years ago, and so I can't wait until they tee it up on September 12th.
Yeah, it's going to be big. And before we hop out of here, Bob, to look at this, to look at our side of it when it comes to the preseason predicted order of finish, I want to ask you that in just a second, but I want to ask you two questions before that in the poll. Preseason Player of the Year, I think, again, as you bring it up, you know who it's going to be before you know who it's going to be, even though there's a lot of talent. I would venture to say you voted for Trevor Lawrence.
No question.
Yeah.
No question. And, I think, you and I were discussing on the show a few weeks ago, he's becoming more and more of a leader. He was always a great passer. He's becoming more and more of a leader, and I like the point that he made that, if the players are actually safer in the bubble at their respective campuses, if they went home and had too much idle time, they would be more likely to run the risk of catching COVID. I thought that was a very good observation.
Yeah, and I have long been, kind of echoing those sentiments here on the show of even before I knew that, he was feeling this way, the notion that, that it is a safer place in the sense of some of the places where these players come from and where they live, and Trevor brought it up, are not the safest places to be. Some of them don't have a dedicated meal that they're going to have every night. Some of them are not in a good neighborhood. And on top of all of that, some of them don't have the parental figures and support that they have at home. They don't have that at home like they have that at school. Dino Babers brought it up. Some of the guys feel better here. I know that one of the linemen that we have, Josh Black, said, I feel safer at Syracuse than I do back at home in Illinois. So, there's the reality of living conditions in general. There's reality of, some of these players telling me in their recruitment that they're playing football for the hope that they can make money in the NFL to get them and their family out of where they are. So there's all of that in the background.
Yeah, no question. And, of course, you've just brought up a lot of the issues that organizations like the New York Times, who take editorial positions about should we have football during the pandemic. These are some of the things that they would point out, that football players get services from their institutions like testing, academic assistance, meals, those kind of football players get services and privileges that regular students don't get. The football players can be on campus. In many cases, the regular students have been sent home to take online campuses. So I think, the argument over the correctness of this is going to wage royally this year. But the fact is, we have this system. We've had it for years. People care about it. And there's a lot of money and effort that has gone into getting us this far. And so, yes, this is going to exacerbate the differences between the student athletes, if we even call them that anymore, the athletes who are on campuses taking classes, the differences between them and the non-athlete students will be more and more apparent this year. But and we can debate that all day long, but that's how it is. And again, we have this system, and no reason now to stop, in my view.
Yeah, so obviously there's a lot that goes into this, and the fact that they're being tested at all, is something huge, because some people that are at home have not been tested at all during this process. They're getting tested multiple times. And as the commissioner of the American Athletic Conference, Mike Oresco, brought up earlier this week, he said, myocarditis and this, that, and whatever, these are things that have come up. But he said, we can be testing and find out things about players that maybe they would have had no matter what. And if we test them, we find stuff out now, we could help them. Maybe help save their life. So there are a lot of positives, and a lot of good can come from this, as well as the statement that mental health could be an issue if there was no football being played. And because to some people this is all they have, and there's also that depression that some, people have told me that they're already feeling. I've talked to high school kids here in Central New York, and Syer Torrance telling me, with everything going on with social justice, he said, I cry myself to sleep some nights. I've gotten depressed. And so football, obviously means something to him, and now can mean maybe even a little bit more, just to be around people that support him and love him and appreciate him and love the skin. He loves the skin he's in, but to be in a family like that really goes a long way. So you take all the money and all of that out of it, and you just talk about the importance it is for, people to have this connection and this opportunity, and the fact that once you start playing a sport, that hourglass gets flipped over, and there's only so much time in it, and that time doesn't get flipped back. So, there's a lot to be said about all the positives that can come from this if we can do it in a safe environment. Final thoughts here, Bob, are on the predicted order of finish for the ACC in the preseason poll. What did you end up going with, as we know that the ACC is not two divisions, this season. It is one giant conference of the ACC, and Notre Dame is shoved right in there. So there's 15 of them, and it's not 7 and 7. It's 1 through 15. So what do you got?
I have Clemson first. I'm going to be very interested to see how having students come back on campus right as the season starts, does that impact their team? But at this point, I'm assuming that Dabo Swinney can keep his players in the bubble and healthy, and if they're healthy, I think Clemson is the best team. North Carolina, which came within a 2-point conversion of knocking the Tigers off last year, has almost everybody back other than losing a couple of key defensive linemen. Very dynamic offense under Coach Mack Brown, similar to the Syracuse offense. A lot of passing and quick runs, and it's up-tempo. Great receivers, great quarterback. I really like the Tar Heels. Their defense is much improved, other than the question about the defensive line. I picked North Carolina ahead of Notre Dame. The Tar Heels play Notre Dame in Chapel Hill. Again, I don't know that home field is going to be the usual advantage without fans, and in North Carolina, we will definitely start the season without fans. That's already been determined. There's a chance, I suppose, that fans could be added at a later date. I know Duke has already decided to play the entire season without fans. I think it's unlikely that State and Carolina would add fans in October or November, but it may not be out of the question yet. But anyway, Notre Dame will have to fly to Chapel Hill, so I give the Tar Heels a small edge in that game, and I've got North Carolina slightly ahead of Notre Dame, although I could be wrong about that. I've got Louisville fourth. Very impressed. Scott Satterfield played his high school football just down the road from Chapel Hill at Orange High School. Have been very, very impressed with the way Scott Satterfield turned that program around dramatically in his first year. He's got lots of key players back on offense. Very dynamic running game and passing game. Tutu, you're not going to catch Tutu Atwell from behind. I promise you that. So I've got the Cardinals up there. I think their defense will be somewhat improved, although that's the big weakness. Pitt has a great defense. I've got them fifth. I know some of the ESPN folks have the Panthers much higher, like even second. I'm still not sold on their offense yet. They went from being a running play-action type of offense to more of a drop-back offense. I just think Kenny Pickett is a better play-action passer than he is a drop-back passer. They lost French, who was a key receiver. So I'm not sure how good the Panthers are going to be offensively, but certainly a very, very tough football program, and they'll be up there. After that, I think, who knows? But, I've got Miami 6 just because Miami Diaz's defense is really good, and I think their offense is going to be better. I've got Duke and NC State in there. I think NC State will definitely be improved. I think Duke lost some key players, but at the same time, I think the Blue Devils have been they've been slowly adding depth and speed. David Cutcliffe, I think, has done a really, really good job of keeping his program together during the pandemic. So I think Duke and NC State are going to have good years. Bronco Mendenhall at Virginia is one of the most impressive coaches I've seen. The way that he could come in from another part of the country and completely change the Virginia culture. So impressed with what they did last year, but I've got them ninth just because they don't have Bryce Perkins anymore, and they don't have either of his top two receivers. So I don't know where Virginia's offense is going to come from, so I've got them down there. I've got Syracuse in about the same location. I could be wrong. Again, as we were discussing earlier, Syracuse had suffered several key losses on defense, and then losing Tristan Jackson early is a blow. There's so much competition in the league. I've got Virginia Tech 11th. That may be way too low. I have a lot of Virginia Tech people in my family that they would be horrified at this, but I want to see how the Hokies are going to be without Bud Foster. He meant so much. He was everything to that defense. And, I think their offense is going to be pretty good, but until I see them play defense without Bud Foster, at remotely the same level, I'm waiting to see. I've got Florida State way down. My hand shook putting the Seminoles at 12th. They have some talent back, but at the same time, coaching change. There's been a lot of turmoil in Tallahassee over the last couple of years. It wouldn't shock me if they go on and have a pretty good year, but at this point, no reason to expect a great year, from my point of view. Wake Forest suffered a major loss when Jamie Newman decided to take his fifth year somewhere else. Sage Surratt just pulled out to get ready for the NFL. The Deacons don't return any running backs, so they're down at the bottom. Then I've got Georgia Tech and Boston College. New coaching situations. I mean, Georgia Tech obviously is in the second year with their coach, but a huge change from the Paul Johnson offense is just going to take time in Atlanta. And in Boston College, Steve Adazio had a strong run game ethic, and he had a good play-action quarterback, and I just don't know what to expect from the Eagles now, so I have them last.
Yeah, very interesting here once again to go over, what Bob Holliday just said of WRALSportsFan.com, his picks for the ACC predicted order of finish in the preseason poll that we just took. He put in Clemson 1, North Carolina 2, Notre Dame, Louisville, Pitt, Miami 6, Duke, NC State, Virginia, Syracuse at 10, Virginia Tech, FSU, Wake Forest, Georgia Tech, and Boston College. Some of ours is very similar. I have not officially released mine yet, but I could do it here for those of you that are listening and watching live, and then I'll put something up about it as well. But I have a Clemson number 1. I have a flip-flop between North Carolina and Notre Dame than you, Bob. I have Notre Dame 2, North Carolina 3. I do think...
And most people probably would do that. I can't quarrel with that at all.
And then, I actually have Florida State a little bit higher than maybe I thought I would have put them. It was hard to see, and I think Louisville could finish 4th in all of this, but I put Florida State at 4. I covered Mike Norvell when he was at Memphis. I know there's been a lot of turmoil, but I know his capabilities and his abilities to recruit and to bring in really good talent and then coach that talent up. Memphis has had tremendous players, not just in college, but to make it to the national level and play in the NFL. I do think Florida State is looking for a resurgent year. I may be wrong about them being above Louisville, but I did put them there. Louisville at number 5. I was very impressed with Scott Satterfield, just like you were, at how quickly he turned things around. And Chris Mack for the men's basketball team. It's funny how much turmoil Louisville went in with Bobby Petrino and Rick Pitino, and then almost, within not even, 2 full years, they changed the entire game, and Mack is doing what he's doing, and obviously Satterfield's doing what he's doing as well. Virginia at number 6. I do believe in Bronco Mendenhall. I thought it would take time. It has, and he's had a lot of success there. Syracuse I put at number 7. I do think with switching to a 3-3-5 defense and bringing in a new defensive coordinator in Tony White could help this team out. I don't want to believe they could get much worse with the amount of points they were giving up. Under their last defensive coordinator, they were giving up, when he first came in, 31 points a game, 38 points a game. They ended a season giving up over 50 points a game over a 3-game span. So I would venture to say that the shifting of this defense and putting a rover in the secondary could help them out, and having a safety linebacker hybrid might be something they look to for the future. I have Duke after that. I think Duke is totally underappreciated and disrespected with their ability to not only bring in really good players, but the ability that David Cutcliffe has to be a quarterback guru, and their secondary typically has a lot of shining stars. I put Georgia Tech a little bit higher here. I know that they're going to struggle a bit. This is the second year with Jeff Collins. Jeff Collins is a guy who I had at Temple. I do believe in his ability to turn things around and to do it in a short amount of time. He only spent a couple years in Temple, and he was able to keep them rocking and rolling. So I think at Georgia Tech, maybe he has more at his disposal here. I would like to think he could do some good things. NC State, Dave Doran doesn't get the respect he deserves. I have them at 10th because I think they'll play in some games and could go either way, but could end up a middle-of-the-road team. Miami, I'm not sold on what they're going to do. I'm not sold on their team as a whole being consistently good. And then Virginia Tech, again, like you, Bob, I put them at 12. The question is, could this be wrong? Yes, absolutely. I like Justin Fuente. Also had him when he was at Memphis, and I do believe in him. But Virginia Tech's gone through some turmoil, and I think some teams are going to squeak out. I put Pittsburgh lower here because as much as they have some good defensive, pieces, they've lost some guys over the last couple of years in running the ball and, obviously in their receiving core. And with Pitt, I'm not sold on their ability to stop a team if they have to simply outscore them. And then, Boston College, I dropped them low here as well because I think they made one of the worst decisions they've ever made as a school in getting rid of Steve Adazio. He went to a bowl game 7 out of 8 seasons, so I'm baffled by the fact that he was a coach that got you at least 6 to 8 wins a season and that wasn't good enough for Boston College playing inside of the Atlantic Division with Clemson and Florida State, Louisville and company. And then I put Wake Forest last because I think Wake Forest will ultimately struggle. They've had a nice string of the last couple of years, but I do think they're going to have some issues here. And yeah, I mean, I think Boston College could flip with them. I think if you look at the basketball side of things, you could put Boston College and Wake Forest, and typically the media does as a whole, put them toward the bottom in men's basketball too. I think Boston College has really put themselves in the basement, but this was a self-inflicted wound. And, I think Dave Clawson will, dig his way out as he does before. I do believe in his coaching ability and everything he's done. But, this is a difficult year to choose. The teams I feel best about are Clemson, North Carolina, Louisville, throw Notre Dame in there, and, maybe a Virginia. But outside of that, I think, like you said, Bob, it's kind of a toss-up after you get out of the first few teams that we have that we've spoken about out there.
Yeah, you and I think alike on a majority of the teams, I think. And, my only thing about Virginia is just Bryce Perkins he was their entire offense, along with his great receivers. And I just don't know where their offense is going to come from. Now, their defense is so resolute. They're sound in every single aspect. They play so hard. They're still going to win some, and they've got a great kicker. We didn't mention kickers, Dan. This league is so deep in kickers. That was a really, you had to vote for Nick Skiba because he made like 25 out of 26. But almost every school returns their kicker. And of course, Syracuse has Schmidt back, and Carolina has Ruggles back. So we got to get in a word for the kickers. Great depth in the kickers. But anyway, I think Virginia's they're gonna win some games with a field goal. They've got a good kicker, but I just don't know where the points are going to come from.
Yeah, and I love that you brought that up because I'll fight anybody on Andre Schmidt and his ability to be a guy that came in as a walk-on and then found his way all the way to the starting job. Nobody knew who he was in the beginning. Nobody knew how to pronounce his name. And then all of a sudden he rose to the top and, put himself in a fantastic history-making moment at Syracuse, as far as awards go and everything. So I love that you mentioned that. And, without special teams, the offense and the defense are completely affected because field position has everything to do with special teams, and they're not mentioned anywhere near enough. So with that being said, Bob Holliday of WRALSportsFan.com. Bob, we open up a ton of doors, as we always do. There's a lot of conversation to be had, and I have some ideas on how you and I can do that as we move toward the future. But as always, I appreciate your time. I appreciate everything that you do, all the work that you do, and the level of expertise that you have, your knowledge and your wisdom. And, of course, above all things, your love for the game because we are fans first. So I appreciate that, and I'm happy to know that we got to do this today, and more than anything else, that you and your family are staying safe.
Absolutely, Dan. My pleasure. Really enjoyed it, and it's going to be an amazing season. I don't know. More questions about normally you have at least a pretty good idea what to expect. You and I have just outlined a vision of how we think things are going to go, but so many factors could influence this. It's just going to be amazing to watch. Can't wait for it to start.
It is going to be one for the books, Bob. That's all I could say. I will.
Be safe, Dan.
You too. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
Take care. That coming from Bob Holliday here on WRALSportsFan.com. So thankful to have him here on the broadcast and be able to talk with us on the ACC preseason polling that him and I both vote in. And I thought there was something really cool here today that I'll make mention of in just a second that just popped up on my social media. But and thank you to Jerry for your kind words. But, it's interesting that, Bob and I obviously didn't talk about this prior to. We didn't say, this is who we've chosen, who we've chosen, who did you pick, and this is who I'm picking, and this, that. We didn't talk about it. So, I'm learning what Bob chose when he's learning what I chose. And what I find really cool about that, like Bob said, is, he's like, you and I think on the same wavelength in a lot of areas. And so it'll be interesting to see where things shake out. And there were areas where we obviously, thought a little bit differently. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen here as I put on the timeline my projected order of finishes so everybody can see it one more time. And, in case you're just tuning into the show, he's very high on Pittsburgh. And I am not. I respect Pat Narduzzi, and I truly do. And I appreciate all the work that he's done. I am just not sold on Pittsburgh's ability to stop teams. I think that they struggle. I mean, as much as they have had, good defensive players in the past, I mean, for goodness sakes, Aaron Donald, who's arguably the best defensive player in the nation in the NFL, not just on the defensive line, but at the same time, Pittsburgh has also struggled with trying to condense those scores at times, and they've lost some talent, as I had stated, over the last couple seasons. So it will be definitely interesting to see where these teams finish, but it was great to be able to put it out there, and having the ACC preseason poll made me at least feel like I was some part of ACC Media Days, which didn't happen this year, and that this season is more real now than ever. So with that being said, we're going to take a step aside for a fast break. When we can, actually, you know what? We're just going to end this video and start a new one. That's what we're going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I do want to let you know the thing that I wanted to say about something that popped up on my timeline that has nothing to do with what we're currently talking about, but has everything to do with life in general. Is the fact of something that I just saw here. So I'm going to put that up here on my social media. If you're following us on social media, you can find Wake Up Call on Instagram. It's at WakeUpCall _DT on Instagram. That's at WakeUpCall _DT. And it's important for you to follow there, in my opinion, because I get to do a lot of really cool things on there and put a lot of inspirational stuff up, including the thing that I'm putting up right now. So I'd love for you to join me there on Instagram as I put this up and have this all set and ready to go. And this is a quote that my one of my friends put up that has obviously been a part of the show many times, and that is Pete Moore. And it says, "Happiness is not out there. It's in you." Love that. Happiness is not out there. It's in you. So make sure that you check that out. I put a bunch of stuff out there this morning, including modpodspopcorn.com. Get your 20% off by putting in the promo code DT20. With that being stated, like I said, we are not going to take a step aside. We're going to just end this video. So if you're watching on Facebook, we're going to start a new video in seconds. So stay right here with us on Facebook.com/LiveNowDT.